Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Over the years, I've owned, read, and reviewed many a Batman crossover, where he's paired up with a number of powerful contemporaries, many of whom much stronger than he is physically. But they've typically had one thing in common: a certain level of restraint. Not so today, as I'm taking issue with Batman versus the Incredible Hulk. And despite how Bruce has been written in recent years, this is definitely one arm wrestling match he's destined to lose. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover actually looks pretty exciting, with the two heroes already facing off while Joker's in the background making off with some MacGuffin. While Bats has thrown one of his signature batarangs, Hulk is countering with what looks like a computer module, which I sincerely doubt is going to fly back to him after he's thrown it. But considering how he bounced off cacti in his fight with Superman, who knows? And in case any reader is fuzzy on their origins, there's a page outlining them fairly well. Written by Len Wein, with art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and Glynis Wein, we begin with one Harvey Maxwell, a Gotham resident who, instead of buying an air conditioner to beat the summer heat, has dreams of being in the Arctic. Hunting polar bears? I guess the heat was so frustrating he subconsciously wants to punish animals that live in freezing temperatures. I'm no psychiatrist, but that sounds pretty messed up. Speaking of messed up, he awakens to find his apartment covered in snow. This is exactly what Mr. Freeze does when he has to remind his roommates it's their turn to do the dishes. Around the same time, at a movie theater, more impossible apparitions appear, as two amorous attendees are interrupted by strange creatures from the very film they're watching. Bobby, I want to go home. The ape creature is eating too loud, the lizard thing is texting nonstop, and the Lovecraftian abomination keeps asking what happened while he was in the bathroom. At a waterfront warehouse, Joker is promising an off-panel figure to deliver something of great importance, and time is running short. As he leaves with his goons, he overhears one, Kenny, suggest the Clown Prince is acting strangely, perhaps even afraid of their client. In response, he tosses a boutonniere from his coat, and Ken catches it, causing the thorns to stab his thumb. It was coated in Joker toxin, so it kills him within seconds. Sure beats the heck out of that old squirting flower gag, doesn't it, Kenny? Kenny?
Oh my god, they killed Kenny! You bastards! Listen!
Let that be a lesson to you, Kenny, old son. The Joker never knows fear. The Joker simply is fear. I wonder if it's lines like that that inspired Scott Snyder to write him more like a horror movie villain. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure if you analyze the older Joker stories close enough, you could find precedents for that kind of thing. But me, I've always preferred a Mr. J that's all about the laughs. All of this has been prologue, and thus we begin Chapter 1, which sees Bruce Banner, under the alias David Banks, working odd jobs at Wayne Research Labs. His inner monologue indicates he doesn't like being so secretive and timid, but he hasn't got much choice. They're working on a gamma gun that could cure terrible diseases, and with some adjustment, may also alleviate him of his own pesky malady of turning into a giant green rage monster. Because it makes total sense that a machine intended for curative purposes in a company owned by Batman would be a gun. Hey, I've got their next big innovation. You modify a paintball gun filled with aloe vera pellets and you just shoot them at burn victims. Out of nowhere, everyone starts laughing uncontrollably, Bruce included, so he dons a radiation suit with its own oxygen supply. Before he can pass out any more suits to the others, Mr. J and his crew walk in, one complimenting on how effective the gas was, and how they are somehow immune. The Joker thinks of everything, Elmo. Man, life away from Sesame Street really changed that guy. Anyway, they intend to steal the gamma gun, so Banner makes way to an alarm switch, but is tackled by Elmo and another goon.
Elmo knows where you live!
The alarm is activated, but trying to free himself from the crooks causes him to transform. Joker has his men open fire, which is predictably ineffective. You were warned to leave Hulk alone, but little men never listen. Always they hunt Hulk with their puny guns, try to kill Hulk, but all they do is make Hulk mad! As Big Green starts wrecking the joint, the crooks prefer the idea of grabbing what they came for and hightailing it, and they almost make it until Batman makes an entrance. The gun flies through the air until caught by the Hulk, who's confused what to do with it, and both Vigilante and Villain wanting it intact. Bats spends so much time inner monologuing how he needs to carefully coerce the release of the machine before Joker that the clown starts ingratiating himself to the Jade Giant, keeping pointy ears at bay by slapping him with his hat.
Well, Batman's pretty lucky. If that had been a Stetson, he'd be dead right now.
He literally just stands by while Joker tells Hulk he's got to start trusting someone at some point, so why not start with a guy that also has green hair and has been persecuted by puny humans? After convincing him that the spooky dude in the cape is the worst of them all, Hulk charges Bats and leaves the machine with Joker, though it is comically a bit hefty for the lithe larcenist. The Dark Knight admits to himself that it may have been a mistake letting Joker ramble, even if it was to ensure the safety of the Gamma Gun, but now there's no reasoning with his opponent. Which means I either have to find a way to beat an angry half-ton monster, or else find an alternative to breathing. Which I've already been looking into, just in case I have to team up with Aquaman to stop Ocean Master from opening an underwater gateway which would release Cthulhu onto the world. For Batman must always be prepared. He tries hitting nerve clusters, but that proves almost hilariously useless, only good for enraging Hulk further. He manages to grab the detective and begins crushing him, much to Joker's delight. I guess tricking a gullible mass of muscle is prank enough to count as a win for him. Before he's paralyzed, Batman boxes Hulk's ears, which wasn't enough to cause harm, just startle him enough to release his grip. Given how ineffectual his punches were before, this might have been more convincing with some kind of gadget involved, but moving on. Bats then tries some sleeping gas, powerful enough to stop a herd of elephants. Which he has because someone at the Gotham Zoo is really bad at locking up at night. But Fried Green Ferrigno is clever enough to hold his breath. Expecting that his opponent can probably hold his breath for a long while, the Dark Knight deals a precise kick to his solar plexus, again not causing pain, but startling the behemoth into inhaling the gas. Hulk is strong. Hulk is strongest one there is. But Hulk is easily startled. After a moment, it's jolly green nap time.
Hey, I smell gas. Pleasant gas. Night gas.
And it's then that Joker and his men take off with the Gamma Gun. It's heavy enough to slow them down, but as they enter an alley that Bats knows to be a dead end, he enters to find it anything but. The streets seem to have been altered, and by the time he makes his way through the maze-like path, Joker is already driving off, laughing all the way. Soon enough, Bruce Wayne makes an appearance at the lab, with the scientists apparently over the laughing gas and armed guards poised to fire on Hulk. He's warned to back off, but Bruce calmly explains that Hulk is dangerous when threatened, and when he's calmed, he reverts to Dr. Bruce Banner, which is exactly the kind of thing you'd expect a rich, privileged businessman to know. Instead of kicking him out, Wayne offers the reverted doctor the job of building a replacement Gamma Gun, and assuring there are ways of dealing with his green alter ego. They shake hands in agreement, with their silhouettes dramatically showing their other selves. Hey, have you noticed that our shadows are kind of looking a little like... Yeah, they've been doing that for about a month now. I keep meaning to call an electrician about it. Onward to Chapter 2, which sees Joker taking the gun to his mysterious client, who needs it to be made well again. And after given some rushed instructions in between panels, the device is activated and used to invigorate the Shaper of Worlds, a Marvel antagonist that first appeared in Incredible Hulk number 155. I don't know much about this character personally. This is actually the first comic I've read with him in it, as far as I can remember. I've done some reading on him, but what I found, like why he looks like a Skrull Jack-in-the-Box, might be retcons that came along after this story, so I'm not going to bother. He exposits to the clown that he has the drive to build, the power to do it, but lacks the imagination or creativity. Like some writers in the comic industry, but far be it from me to name names. He'd spent eons feeding off the dreams of others, making them reality until his ship came within spitting distance of a star-going nova. While not physically harmed, his abilities have been hampered, and without that power to absorb dreams, he'll go mad and apparently the universe with him. He arrived on Earth, fabricated a warehouse to hide his spacecraft, and those events in the prologue were Shaper probing the minds that may be useful to him, but not finding any until discovering the most unique mind in all the universe. Joker.
That's right, Joker has the most unique mind in the universe. And don't get the Shaper started on the Joaquin Phoenix movie. He will deny up and down that there was any influence from other movies like Taxi Driver.
The crew is wondering why their boss is bothering to help a space freak, and it boils down to Joker wanting to keep everyone else sane so he can stay the craziest man on Earth. In the Valley of the Sane, it's the insane man who's king!
A king that is routinely beaten up by a guy in a bat costume and locked in an insane asylum. Bit of a stretch from the guy that's created a gas to force people into maniacal laughter and tried driving others insane to see things from his perspective, but that's pre-crisis, I guess.
Little hiccup in whatever mysterious deal the pair have, the gamma gun, which was thought to cure the Shaper, isn't working. He's still losing his powers and at risk of going bonkers on a cosmic scale, which seems to make Mr. J awful nervous for a guy that knows no fear. Weird how the artists left the red off his top lip, though. Anyway, this rather short chapter concludes and we go to the third, seeing a Wayne Enterprises supertanker repurposed as a series of laboratories, 3 miles off the Gotham coast. One of which, headed by Banner, is working on the new gamma gun when a scientist accidentally drops a component. Bruce, not Wayne, is infuriated because of what the project could do for him, and has to fight to keep himself from changing and apologizes for the outburst. Understandably, his staff is also tense, and pretty afraid.
Someone already ate Banner's clearly marked lunch from the fridge, so you're all doomed anyway.
He's further calmed by the tea and insistent service of Alfred Pennyworth, tasked with making the anger-prone doctor more comfortable. His boss, meanwhile, is busy with his night job, in this case taking on some crooks that heisted a hardware store. And he even seems to know a couple on a first-name basis. I guess even crime fighters have to network somehow. It was really about finding a lead on Joker, but he's already knocked everyone out and figures, heck, arrest them for the robbery anyway. Then he spots a matchbook on the ground, the second he'd found that night. Apparently the first one found off-panel, belonging to the Black Swan Cafe.
A lot of people claim it's just a rip-off of the Perfect Blue Cafe in Japan.
There's a quick 2-panel look back at the lab, but it's nothing special, just Alfred noting how far Banner is pushing himself. Mostly we go to the aforementioned cafe, which looks more like a dive bar than anything else. A man named Rico is explaining to some contemporaries that a job the Joker had planned was suddenly abandoned for something bigger, so his gooning services were no longer needed. How bad did the economy have to be for supervillain henchmen to get fired? He claims to have told Mr. J to go somewhere, probably of the eternal fiery damnation variety, but is interrupted by a vagrant that's been asking people for spare change. He's thrown out and revealed to be Batman, having learned everything he needs to know.
Hey, he doesn't maintain all those billions by paying for his own drinks.
On the tanker, a pair of military choppers land with a Colonel Orville Baker taking custody of Dr. Banner. Alfred protests, saying they don't have any authority to do this, but Robert says it may be better this way, suddenly beginning to sulk that he wasn't meant to be cured and can at least be put somewhere he can't hurt people, which on one hand kind of makes sense in a way, but on the other hand doesn't feel very earned in this particular story, feels more like a 180. In any event, the butler isn't having it, which earns him a smack across the face and being called a punk, which is not a term I've seen used on guys that age. The colonel chastises the assailant because the boss wanted this to look all proper and military-like, which further exposes the fraud to Banner, and he begins transforming. Operation Dogpile on the Hulkster isn't much of a success, so Orville readies a taser rifle that should have the power to knock him out, because he seems to think the charge will be enough to take down King Kong, who in this universe would still be a fictional giant ape, so whatever. Maybe he just needed a segue into calling him a green gorilla. He fires, hitting the Hulk and electrocuting him, but it's the Hulk, so not terribly effective. Why, little men? Why do you always try to destroy Hulk with your puny guns and machines? Hulk never wants to fight you. Hulk only wants to be left in peace.
Hulk want to relax in meadow. Listen to sounds of nature while reading Chaucer and Steinbeck. Have scones from a little tea shop off beaten path. You know, make day of it.
As Hulk prepares to smash the annoying humans, totally, for real this time, he's confronted by a new, larger creature that wasn't there a moment ago, one apparated from the passing thoughts of Orville, who figured they'd need a bigger monster to rein Greenie in. It literally swats Hulk aside, which he's not used to, so he begins ripping off and throwing pieces of the tanker to no effect. And he's probably too angry at the moment to really notice the irony in this. He leaps at the creature, but then gets pulled in, all his struggle for nothing as the beast creates a cage-like stomach displaying its new captive, and the goons leave with their catch. Later, Alfred has explained all this to Commissioner Gordon as Batman arrives. Jim is patched through to General Thunderbolt Ross in New Mexico, who confirms there's been no military action in the past 24 hours to apprehend Banner. We also see Doc Samson, who's totally up to lend some muscle if need be, but we don't see him for the rest of the story, so don't get your hopes up. We go to the Shaper's warehouse for the beginning of Chapter 4. Joker talked the Space Genie robot thing to use some of its dwindling power to conjure up the dough-like creature so they can revert Hulk into Bruce Banner so he can adjust the Gamma Gun to cure Shaper.
No need, puny machine. Hulk suggests alternative medicine. Try soaking in tub with psychic crystals and take St. John's toe jam. It like St. John's wort, but half price.
Hulk is not a fan of this idea, since he knows that his alter ego is trying to get rid of him, and this gives him the rage boost he needs to bust out. Shaper tries to stay his rampage through diplomacy of all things, but that's when the madness begins, and his powers pull horrifying images of Batman and Banner from the minds of Joker and Hulk respectively. Whereas Joker is too stricken with fear, Hulk merely smashes through the images before him and advances on the Shaper. Yet for some reason, each step he takes makes him less furious, and his mechanical adversary is less pained, until they both take a silent pause. Hulk leaves, and the Shaper makes a revelation. The unique gamma radiation the giant emits was alleviating his pain. Hulk is the cure he needs, and the Clown Prince of Crime has to get him back somehow. A prospect he doesn't seem thrilled about. Later, he surprises Batman by lighting the bat signal after knocking out the police in the headquarters. After his arm is twisted, literally, he explains the situation in between panels, but Pointy Ears is incredulous, preferring to throw J-Man back in Arkham. The lunatic uses a smoke bomb and appears behind him to make a point. They could waste time doing their usual good guy chases bad guy routine, or they can find the Hulk. Bats reluctantly agrees, and we get a blend of different scenes of them trying to find the big green guy, though narration notes he could have very well skipped town, and the price of not finding him is pretty steep.
Has anyone considered the very real possibility that the Earth and the universe will be just fine? It's just that the Shaper of Worlds has a really terribly inflated ego.
They eventually find their quarry, stopping him from killing a pair of guys that evidently tried to mug him while he slept.
Batman made Jason Todd or Robin after he heisted the wheels off the Batmobile. These guys just tried to mug a sleeping Hulk. I think that qualifies them for Justice League of America membership. Or at least Justice League International.
And once again, for a guy that claimed to be fear incarnate, Joker sure does seem afraid here, as Batman tries talking to the brute, but Hulk doesn't want to be tricked again. In fact, he doesn't even feel like smashing them, choosing to bound away instead. Bats catches him with a grapnel line and is pulled along with him, telling Joker to follow, and the clown does take off, but it's unclear if he's listening to Batman or going to get a coffee. Half a mile later, Hulk crashes through a couple levels of a parking garage, only then noticing his stowaway. Batman tries the sleeping gas again, but the behemoth merely blows it away with a swing of his arm, then proceeds to grab Pointy Ears mid-kick and throw him aside. Realizing his opponent has better instincts than most would think, the Dark Knight is running out of ways to take him down as he dives through the windows of a sedan that's thrown at him. He demands Hulk listen to him as he grabs his leg, but is knocked aside with ease.
For last time, Hulk cannot get you into MCU. Hulk no Justice League movie not do great, and Hulk have very little faith in Snyder Cut. But give Robert Pattinson chance, why don't you?
The detective then throws down a smokescreen too dense for the Hulk to disperse, so he goes with his usual standard of smashing everything, wrecking the structure until it caves in with both of them inside. A few minutes later, Hulk naturally walks out and jumps away, as Joker arrives to piece through the rubble to find the tenacious Dark Knight, who shielded himself with the crossbeams as the building collapsed. Purple Pants himself is tantruming about stupid little men, and the sound effect of him knocking over a trash can is trash, which is kind of hilarious. He sees someone nearby, preparing to kill him out of spite, but it turns out to be an old blind man asking if he can help his new friend. Considering Hulk shouted a death threat, I imagine he must be a little deaf too. Being called a friend is enough to put a hold on smashing, and the old-timer convinces the Emerald Muscle Man to take a seat and vent his problems. It's suggested that if he stopped fighting and tried helping people, it might change things for the better, having friends by being a friend. That's when Joker arrives, offering just the way to help the world like the big guy is considering, which only antagonizes him. The old man convinces him to think before he acts. Hulk agrees and leaves with the clown, not looking back, fortunately, as it's revealed that the old-timer was actually Batman.
The old man mask kind of bore a resemblance to Stan Lee, but back in 1981 he was a lot less gray, so it was probably just a coincidence. Or all those MCU cameos affecting my brain.
Chapter 5 begins as the brief reprieve Shaper of Worlds got from Hulk's gamma vibes has worn off, his creative energy rippling from the warehouse. Joker sends the Green Golem on his way, opting to stay behind rather than risk his own death. Batman smacks him for his cowardice, and it's not quite as meme-worthy as the one with Robin, because hitting the clown is just standard procedure for the guy. He catches up to Hulk and offers his help, which may be necessary since they're suddenly beset by apparitions of various villains from their memories, 3 from Hulk's gallery, 3 from Batman's. While potentially able to kill them as they begin to grow in size, they're swiftly defeated, some breaking apart and others exploding into butterflies and lizards scattering in the aftermath.
This is the 5th weirdest promotion for a pet store I have ever seen.
Joker watches from a safe distance as the two make their way to the warehouse, and no sooner does Hulk use his lock-picking method of crashing through the front door than they find the Shaper's energy has created an invisible shield they can't get through. Playing on the brute's pride, Batman suggests the field is stronger than Hulk, a clever tactic that sends him in such a rage that he hammers the barrier, in 2 thin panels that don't show much of anything, honestly. We do see a passed-out banner as narration says the Shaper of Worlds isn't crazy anymore. Joker arrives to collect on his end of the bargain with the alien, and despite the Dark Knight's protestations, the Shaper grants the clown what he wanted: infinite power. Which, for some reason, involves wearing a funky jester's outfit with a cape and puffy sleeves. And now I find myself questioning Joker's normally excellent taste in clothing. Anyway, declaring himself king of the world, he flies off on a magic carpet, and Batman chases after him. Knowing how easily the Caped Crusader could be killed, Banner pleads with Shaper to do something, but he's gonna honor the bargain he made, even if it costs Batman's life or the planet Earth. This leads to another hulking out, but Robo Genie just sends him somewhere far away. Joker, meanwhile, has gotten to work reshaping Gotham into a grand circus of candy cane buildings and smiling clown pedestrians. Even Batman isn't immune, getting turned into a doughy jester.
I knew this would happen when I ate that cupcake last week. And to think of all those times I used pastries to subdue criminals. You betrayed me, hostess!
Hulk appears, apparently not having been sent too far away, and pulls the clown off his rug, ready to smash, but is turned into a clown himself, with apparently weaker punching strength. With his abilities, Joker can do anything, at which point Batman voices his disappointment, claiming the world he created is like something from Alice in Wonderland. It's an idea that strikes Mr. J's fancy, and he adjusts reality accordingly, giving Tweedle Hulk a single-file line of card soldiers to knock over. "This is silly, Joker. Aren't you a little too old to believe in fairy tales?"
said the guy in a bat suit with a Martian and an Amazonian princess in his bat Rolodex.
He goads him into changing reality a few more times, until things are all topsy-turvy to fit his sense of madness, then to something akin to an abstract painting. Bats challenges him to truly make things whatever he wants them to be, and Joker accepts. He unleashes his mind, changing reality again and again and again on a whim, creating a greater strain on his imagination.
The kind of problem that certain people in entertainment media will never understand.
It all ends up being too much, too many possibilities, and he's punched out by Batman, reverting to his non-powered form in a normal Gotham street. And without the dream, there is no power. And without the power, the dreamer swiftly falls. When it came right down to it, the Joker couldn't even beat himself.
What ultimately broke him was, even with all that seeming omnipotence, he still couldn't figure out why kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
The Shaper of Worlds, feeling the deal he made is all squaresies now, takes off to find other dreams to make real. So I guess Joker never specified that he wanted to keep the infinite power even after an impromptu power nap. The only place Joker still has those abilities is in his own mind, wherein he's lost for the foreseeable future in a padded cell. With no sign of the Shaper after liftoff, there's just Bruce Banner to deal with, who has also vanished. Batman tells Gordon not to call in an APB, thinking they should just leave the doc alone, as the comic ends on Bats looking through a barred window at the poor unfortunate soul, continuing to live in his own personal nightmare.
That was Batman versus the Incredible Hulk, and it was an alright story. Entertaining enough, though with a few peculiarities, perhaps attributed to the time it was written.
The premise isn't bad, Joker making a deal with an entity that could give him near limitless power, but the story shows a lot more focus on capturing the Hulk, and, him getting away a lot. The Shaper of Worlds doesn't seem like an outwardly villainous character, more passive and unconcerned with lesser beings, while being more calculating and even honorable to a degree, even if it did put a planet at risk. We didn't see much of Joker's reality warping, which, as the endgame for the series of events, was resolved rather nonchalantly. His mind being taxed I can understand, but why he no longer has the power is not really well explained.
Though this is hardly the only time Joker would gain godlike abilities. There's Emperor Joker, for one thing, and perhaps sometime in the future another writer will try the same premise again. There's certainly other stuff they could do with it, though I gotta say, there are some writers I would just as well not see helm such a project. Yikes.
The writing often feels very much of its time, sometimes sounding in my head like the opening narration to the Hulk TV show with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, which kinda makes sense since it was still on at the time this was published. It did get a little repetitive, though. Narration or characters using the same terms like Green Gorilla or Raging Beast Within. The weirdest example for me, however, is how often Banner's full name was repeated, like he was being scolded by his mom. A definite plus here is that Batman is portrayed as human, resourceful, but not omnipotent in his own right. He uses his wits, his mastery of disguise, his skills, and even internally laments the struggles he goes through when he has to fight the Hulk. Though it was a little odd at the end when he's scolding Joker, referring to Hulk as a monster, and then walks beside him and internally calls him a friend. Joker's motivations were at first kind of odd, claiming to want to be the only one as crazy as he is, which maybe fits his pre-crisis personality, but if he was doing this for the power granted by the Shaper, why bother with the first excuse at all?
Or should we be going with a, he's crazy, we don't have to explain it kind of cop-out?
That could also be used to excuse how Joker proclaims he simply is fear, but then is shown cowering behind Batman or staying out of danger. On an unrelated note, if you read closely, Hulk is rather well-spoken. Sure, we've heard him speak in grunts, growls, poor grammar, and booming gruff tones, but a lot of his dialogue here is actually very proper. He's practically an elocution coach compared to some of his other speaking iterations.
If you're at all interested in seeing these two very unlikely combatants go head-to-head in a pre-crisis setting, I'd say give this one a look. It does have a few contrivances, but the story is otherwise solid. And it's a bit dialogue-heavy, but the art is just downright classic. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.